Today on Christian World News, war over Libya. Once again, the U.S. takes military action in a Muslim nation. What does it mean for the church in the Middle East?
Plus,
we got food, we got everything we need. We're so fortunate. So now it's like, I want to help other people. What can I do?
a truckload of compassion, the Christian ministry that's distributing more than 90 tons of relief to Japan.
And from the UK, the Christian counselor who could lose her job for telling a gay man that homosexuals can change. Revolutions and military strikes in the Middle East raise concerns for the region's Christians. Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith.
And I'm George Thomas. Well, once again, U.S. forces are engaged in an armed conflict with a Muslim nation. The United States put together the coalition that is enforcing a no-fly zone over the nation of Libya. The stated goal? To protect Libyan citizens in rebel-held areas from a massacre by Muammar Gaddafi's forces. Some Arab nations are supporting the effort, but the conflict is raising questions about Western interventions in Muslim nations, specifically charges of a Christian crusade against the Islamic faith. Clifton Clark is an associate professor of global missions at Regent University. He has extensive experience on the African continent. Recently, I spoke with him about this very issue. Do Muslim nations see the U.S. incursions through the eyes of the Crusader lens when they look at what's taking place today in these parts of the world?
In many respects, that's true, because Muslims do have a great sense of history, and that's when they study Sharia law. History is important. And so for a lot of Muslims, looking back historically, it was the Crusades that stopped the massive spread and incursion of Islam. And so to many Muslims that looking back now, it's all about this idea that the West is again attacking Islam. And so for many Muslims, they see that through the eyes of Islam. So one thing I would say is that that for them, it's not so much the Crusades now as opposed to the jihad, fighting to defend the faith.
What are the implications for Christians who serve in Muslim countries?
Whenever there is perceived threat by the West, when we think about Iraq, we think about Afghanistan, there's a perceived threat of the West onto the Ummah, the Muslim community. There's adverse effect upon Christian community. And we've seen even the bombing that we saw in Egypt on January the 6th. These are all backlashes for what is taking place across the world.
There is a Christian population in this predominantly Muslim country called Libya. What are the conditions that they are dealing with, living under today?
Well, first of all, from the 1st century to the 6th century, there's been a powerful, long-standing Christian presence, and that's important to take note of. Today, we have, about 3% out of the 97% Sunni Muslims. We have 3% who are Christians. We have the Coptic Christians, which are about 60,000 in number. We have the Catholic Church with a seat in Cairo, and we have a number of other smaller evangelical churches that has taken place. So there is a small presence, vulnerable community there.
And has this small, vulnerable community had the freedom, the room to flourish within the Libyan society?
Christians and Muslims in Libya have been living in relative peace. Of course, there's restrictions. You can't worship, you can't proselytize, but there was no sort of overt persecution, which might change because of this current situation.
Was Gaddafi good for the Christian community in Libya?
Well, I wouldn't say it was good, but I mean, it's a question of which is the worst of worst evils, I think. Certainly, Gaddafi kept back the Muslim Brotherhood who wanted to take over. We have the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, also who wanted to more radical Islam in Libya. And Gaddafi, and many of them even tried to overthrow Gaddafi because of his relationship with the West. And so for Christians, there was relative peace, although there wasn't complete freedom.
I do want to get your opinion about these so-called rebel groups. What can you tell us about them? Are they a friend or foe of the United States and those of us us here in the
Well,
West?
that's the big question. And there are a number of coalition groups coming together. But these are different people who are defecting from the government. If those democratic groups get together, we could see great democracy taking place. But my concern is what we're going to see is groups like the Islamic Brotherhood, the the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, Al-Qaeda. These groups, which might put out a face of peace and democracy, are lurking beneath the surface, and you can guarantee they want a piece of the action.
And they certainly do want a piece of the action. Dr. Clark talked about the Muslim Brotherhood. They are active throughout the Muslim world. There is growing concern that this group is now taking over the revolution that swept Hosni Mubarak from power in Egypt.
All right, thanks so much, George. And as many feared, that group is gaining influence in Egypt. Increasingly, the secular faces seen during the protests are being shouldered aside, particularly in the recent nationwide referendum that reshaped Egypt's political structure. John Wagi has more.
1 month ago, he was one of the heroes of the revolution. But on referendum day, a mob threw stones at Mohammed el-Baradei, cursed him, and ultimately kept him from casting his ballot. El-Baradei opposed the referendum because he believes new political parties need time to organize and gain support. Holding elections in September only helps establish groups like the Muslim Brotherhood. Many in Egypt's Christian community agree with him. Ramez Atala is director of the Bible Society in Egypt.
Democracy, in our context, gives a grassroots majority, if it's by popular vote, for a very radical Islam, like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. Yes, we expected that if there was a democratic election, the radical Muslims would take over the country.
Radical Islamic leaders pushed hard to pass the referendum, telling Egyptians they had a spiritual obligation to vote yes. Others took a more worldly approach. This video shows a man filling in dozens of yes ballots. Opponents say thousands of ballots might have been faked. Clerics also made it clear they would tolerate no changes to the long-standing constitutional provision establishing Islam as Egypt's official religion.
In this case, we will declare the jihad in the sake of Allah immediately, God willing.
For Egypt's Christians, it's a sign they will continue to be second-class citizens. They already suffered government discrimination under the Mubarak regime and were the target of deadly attacks by radical Muslims. They believe that under the Muslim Brotherhood, the situation will only get worse.
What we're concerned about is the long term. We're concerned about the elections in 4 years' time after these elections, because we're seeing now the nice face. Will we then see a different approach? Their history seems to indicate that what we're seeing now is not what we will see in the future.
Atala says the new reality in Egypt doesn't necessarily mean more freedom for Christians, but it could lead to a stronger church.
And I really personally believe that if Christians in Egypt are under duress, are in more difficult situations, their faith will flourish and it'll be better for the gospel. If we get the freedom we're yearning for, I think the gospel as a message and as a lifestyle will weaken.
John Wagi, CBN News.
The United Nations Human Rights Council has dropped a resolution condemning religious defamation, putting in its place one that supports an individual's freedom of belief. For years, Muslim countries pushed for a resolution making it a crime to criticize religions. Opponents said that resolution mainly protected Islam, mirroring the harsh blasphemy laws used to persecute Christians and other minorities in Muslim nations. The U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom hailed the new resolution, saying, quote, properly focuses on protecting individuals from discrimination or violence instead of protecting religions from criticism.
A terror attack at a bus stop in Jerusalem this week killed one person and injured more than 40 others. CBN News has learned that the sole fatality was a Christian woman who spent her life in the ministry. Mary Gardner was from Scotland. She spent 20 years living with a tribe in Togo, translating the Bible into their language. She came to Israel earlier this year to hone her translating skills at a ministry called the Home for Bible Translators.
Coming up on Christian World News, how do you deliver 92 tons of relief aid to an earthquake zone? One box at a time. The amazing volunteers bringing help to the victims of Japan's earthquake.
CWNews.org, your constant news source on the World Wide Web. Find daily updates on the global church. Watch the weekly broadcast.
3 former presidents come together to honor the life and ministry.
Also available in podcast. The in-depth insights into our reporter blogs.
Taliban kidnapped at least 18
In
South
Peru, a
Korean
handful of
Christians.
Your online news source for complete coverage of the global church.
I want to talk to you for a few minutes about what may be God's best for you.
In the new DVD, The Law of Expectation from Pat and Gordon Robertson, Pat shares the essential truth that enables you to receive the favor of God.
God knows who you are. He knows everything about you. And God says, I love you, and here's what I'm going to do for you.
Pat and Gordon Robertson bring you powerful principles of thought and behavior that can transform your life. Experience the joy of realizing your dreams, the power of finding purpose in your life, and the fulfillment that comes from building a deeper relationship with God.
You'll see prosperity in your life. You'll see blessing in your life. Why? Because of God's favor.
Get the Law of Expectation and experience the wonderful blessing God has for you. Available now.
And I realized God was saying, look, you can keep doing this your way or you can do it my way. Your way, you got what you got. My way, I can work this out in such a way that it will astonish you. And so I remember saying, look, here's what's left of my life. You can have it. You can trust the Lord and He will do His work in your life, and you will be so glad that He did.
You are looking at Christian compassion in action in Japan. CBN's Operation Blessing is at work in one of the hardest hit areas of the quake zone. Here, the disaster relief team is delivering 4 tons of emergency supplies to shelters and a hospital in Ishinomaki. In that city alone, about 15,000 people are being housed in 200 different shelters. Operation Blessing is working to provide ongoing supplies of food, water, and clothes.
Operation Blessing is one of several Christian relief agencies working in Japan. Franklin Graham's Samaritan's Purse flew 92 tons of aid into that country this week.
Missionaries and members of Japan's Christian community helped them distribute the supplies. This story comes to us courtesy of the Youth with a Mission news service, Grassroots News International.
Here in Sendai, over 100 neighborhood volunteers gather at this makeshift warehouse, waiting to unload 4 large trucks of aid material. The supplies have been sent by Samaritan's Purse, a Christian relief organization out of North Carolina, USA.
We're prepared at Samaritan's Purse for disasters. We have a warehouse in Charlotte that has basic supplies that are usually needed everywhere in times like this. So we started loading a 747 at that time, getting it ready to come over here. These folks have been waiting a long time to help. It's cold, people haven't had food, but they're still waiting. They're still eager to help.
Finally, the trucks arrive. Willing hands quickly unload 92 tons of supplies, such as food, diapers, blankets, fuel cans, bars of soap, and hygiene kits, as well as other supplies. This group is not just comprised of professional emergency responders. The young, old, and even the local gaikokojin, or foreigners, are pitching in.
We got water, we got food, we got everything we need. We're so fortunate. So now it's like, I want to help other people. What can I do?
For me, I want to support them because I think I'm not victim, I'm a supporter in Sendai.
Samaritan's Purse has committed further supply efforts if necessary, and donations can be made through their website. Here in Sendai, it is exciting to see both international and local communities coming together to see practical aid delivered to those in greatest need.
And that was Josh Hansworth reporting for Grassroots News International. To learn how you can partner with Christian relief agencies in Japan, just visit our website, cwnews.org.
When Christian World News
he said
returns.
That he had just lied about everything. His name, address, occupation.
Why this Christian counselor was targeted by a gay rights activist. Now she could lose her job.
newcbn.com users how we could make our website easier to use. And we listened.
This is really easy to read and move through.
The information opens up a whole lot quicker.
Yeah, it's much faster. There's everything I'm interested in right here. The click of a mouse.
The new CBN.com has been redesigned, making it faster to find your favorite 700 Club stories, musical guests, our online community, and special features.
Anyone can enjoy this new site.
Visit the new CBN.com today.
Hi, I'm Gordon Robertson. Jesus told us that if we have faith, we can speak to the mountain and it will move. Are there mountains in your life that you're currently facing? How do you break through the limits of your faith and see the miracles God has promised you in His Word? My father and I have put together a special teaching, The Law of Expectation. In it, you'll discover how to train your heart and mind to expect great things.
In this latest DVD, The Law of Expectation, Pat and Gordon Robertson bring you powerful principles of thought and behavior that can transform your life. You'll discover the power of expectations in your life, how to break through the limits of your faith, and what it means to agree with God and receive His favor and abundance.
Get the Law of Expectation and learn to expect and experience the wonderful blessings God has for you.
I was always on the cusp of exploding. So I figured out if I get rid of the wife and the kids, then I can just send them money. Went to the junk drawer, got the Bible out, put the tape in, and I believe that moment, Christ made sense. There is no earthly reason why we're still married. It is a divine intervention, and I thank God, and showing me what love, grace, and forgiveness looks like.
In Britain, you can make fun of Christians and you can mock the Bible.
Yeah, you can say plenty of things there as long as they're deemed politically correct. As Dale Hurd reports, saying anything otherwise might cost you your job.
Christian therapist Leslie Pilkington's career may be over because she tried to help a homosexual man who said he wanted to leave the gay lifestyle. The incident happened in 2009.
I was approached by a young man who said that his name was Matthew Stins, actually, and that he was gay, he was very unhappy, and he was depressed, and he wanted to leave the lifestyle, and would I be able to help him?
But his real name was not Matthew Stins. It was Patrick Strudwick, and he was lying about why he had come to her.
And to be quite honest, I totally believed everything that he said. I had no reason to suspect anything else. He seemed to me to be very anxious. He kept asking a lot of the same questions, but I thought that was because he was just trying to decide if this was the right therapist for him.
Leslie says that throughout 2 counseling sessions, Patrick made it clear that he wanted to leave the gay lifestyle. What she didn't know was that he was an undercover journalist, and he had a tape recorder strapped to his body.
Then the counseling sessions ended, and Leslie's professional nightmare began.
And he then telephoned me to say that, in fact, he was not at all who he said he was. His voice completely changed. He said that he had just lied about everything, his name, address, occupation, that he wasn't unhappy at all, that he was a gay journalist, he was happy in his gay lifestyle, and that his purpose was to expose me and people like me.
Strudwick heads a group called the Stop Conversion Therapy Task Force, which opposes psychological conversion therapy to help gays become straight. And he wrote about his experience with Leslie in 2 of Britain's biggest papers. Pilkington now faces disciplinary proceedings by the British Association for Counseling and Psychotherapy. Among her transgressions, praying to God to heal Strudwick of his homosexuality, and having an agenda that homosexuality is wrong. She could lose her accreditation. Andrea Williams heads the Christian Legal Center, which is helping Pilkington.
Leslie Pilkington, if you believe that a homosexual can change their behaviour, you will lose your job. You will be disabused of your position. You will lose your professional accreditation.
The gay agenda is one of the most potent political movements in the United Kingdom, even though according to a poll there are not very many homosexuals in Britain. Only 1.5% of the population. That's 750,000 homosexuals in a nation of 60 million people.
There's been an incredible shift in our nation, but in our media and particularly in our law, that treats the whole homosexual issue, the whole gay agenda, as something that absolutely equivalent to race.
Leslie's attorney Paul Diamond says it's part of a broad agenda to overturn all traditional values on sexuality.
They call it human rights, and they use these grand terms like tolerance and diversity. There's a hard-nosed political agenda of which an objective appears to be to remove Judeo-Christian morality from the public realm.
The British government has approved a plan to insert homosexual themes throughout school curricula, even math, to help children view homosexuality as normal. Meanwhile, the British High Court has ruled in a landmark case that Christian beliefs on sexual ethics may be harmful to children.
It was argued the state has a duty to protect vulnerable children. The government in Britain argued this from being infected with such ideas being Judeo-Christian views on sexual morality.
One of the riskier things to say in Britain today, especially if you're a therapist, is that homosexuals are not born that way, or that homosexuals can become heterosexual. After Strudwick's undercover investigation, the British Medical Association decided to brand gay conversion therapy as harmful. Strudwick told CBN News that gay people in Britain are, as they are everywhere, at risk of hate, intolerance, and persecution. He said there is no empirical evidence conversion therapy works, and there is plenty of evidence that conversion therapy does damage. He added that love needs no cure. Diamond and Pilkington say conversion therapy works.
People do change after treatment, and it has a high success rate, and there's no evidence of any harm. That is actually the evidence.
Science actually backs up the Word of God. And as Christians, it's to be encouraged to hear that science is backing up the Word of God, and that you are not born that way.
Pilkington, who has a son who is gay, waits to see if she will be banned from ever counseling again. She believes God is taking her through this experience and using it in people's lives.
I also feel that the Lord's giving me an opportunity in that to try and speak to those who are in a homosexual lifestyle, but who are unhappy. And really the message is that you're not born that way. You don't have to stay in that lifestyle. There's hope. And that's a really important message for today, that there's hope.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, London.
Let Superbook take your kids on an amazing adventure. Back to the beginning of time.
Then God said, "Let there be light."
Come explore with Chris.
Anything I can do to help?
Joy.
Where are we?
And Gizmo.
I am too scared to look.
As they experience the wonder of creation.
We call this Eden.
Encounter temptation.
Chris, do not do it!
And learn important truths from the Bible. For your gift of $25 or more, you'll receive a special edition of Superbook's newest DVD, In the Beginning, Superbook trading cards, and help fund future Superbook episodes.
It's amazing.
Give the kids you love a gift they'll watch over and over. Superbook. It's super power for super kids.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Christian World News, your window to the global church. For stories of revival,
Another revival.
persecution,
Funeral, relatives and fellow Christians mourn his
The first country over the international date
I'm
line.
Coach Thomas in Baghdad, and coming up on the broadcast, an exclusive interview.
and the impact of Christian leaders. Watch Christian World News.
Well, not long ago, 9-year-old Esther had only a few months to live until a unique Israeli organization stepped in to save her.
That little girl from Africa joined 2,500 Christian, Muslim, and other children helped by a group of Jewish doctors. Julie Stahl has more.
These children look happy, healthy, and active. But just weeks ago, each one of them faced death. They needed open-heart surgery, and they got it through Save a Child's Heart in Israel.
The idea behind Save a Child's Heart is to provide life-saving heart surgery for children from developing countries.
That was the case with Esther, a Christian from the Maasai tribe in Tanzania. Rheumatic fever damaged her heart, and she couldn't get the necessary help in her own country. She became the 2,500th patient of Save a Child's Heart.
Her heart was huge. She was very limited in a very simple task. Even simple walking, it was difficult for her.
Sister Angelica runs the children's home where Esther lives. She heard about the program from a volunteer who just happened to be riding the same bus from Kenya to Tanzania. Angelica contacted Save a Child's Heart and learned a team was actually heading to Tanzania to climb Mount Kilimanjaro 2 days later. One of the doctors, Dr. Godwin Godfrey, is Tanzanian.
Actually, for me, it looks like a miracle.
They met Esther, saw she needed surgery urgently, and 2 months later, she was in Israel. Dr. Lior Sasson operated for hours, reconstructing the valve in Esther's heart.
Now she can live a normal life. She would have to take preventive medicine that her valve would not be affected again.
Executive Director Simon Fisher says more than 50% of the children treated have been Palestinian from the West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
We believe that Save a Child's Heart has a very positive message which it sends out from the Middle East, from Israel, about people working together from different nationalities and different religions for the best of our children.
Part of the program's goal is to train doctors from developing countries, like Dr. Godfrey, who will work in Israel for 5 years.
This training will be one of its kind for my country, so hopefully when I go back, I will actually start the open heart surgery also for the young children.
Before and after surgery, the children live in this house, usually with a parent or caregiver. House mother Laura Cassis says the change in the children is amazing.
You see the children going home healthy. You know, you see children that sometimes can barely walk, practically running to the gate and to the minibus to go to the airport, and they're smiling and they're looking forward to going home, and you know that they have a future.
Less than 2 weeks after her surgery, Esther was dancing with her newfound friends and sang us a song she sings at home.
I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Holon, Israel.
What
awesome.
a face,
yeah,
George.
Terrific.
And
That's
a
awesome.
great-
And the fact that you've got Palestinians, Jewish people
Yes.
from all over the world helping to make life better for these kids.
Beautiful way to end the show. Thanks so much for watching.
Until next week, goodbye.
And God bless you.
And God bless you.